why black people were so slim in the 1970s, in the home movies of the 1970s, or in the photographs taken between the said timeline, whether curled at the edges in family albums, pinned to corkboards in barbershops, or yellowing behind glass frames in living rooms. There happened to be this consistent clarity that cannot be captured in words alone. It lives in the narrowness of waists, wrapped in bell-bottoms, in collarbones resting lightly beneath open shirts, in faces sharpened by both youth and endurance. Black people were strikingly slimmer then. Not in the carefully cultivated sense of modern fitness culture, nor in a manner dictated by diet books or celebrity regimes, but in a raw, unguarded way, naturally slim, light on their feet, their bodies shaped by the rhythm of living, rather than by the discipline of restriction. To understand why, one must step fully into that decade, not as an observer, but as a participant moving through its streets, kitchens, factories, schoolyards, and sanctuaries. Before we dive right in, don't forget to support our works by hitting the like button, share video with friends and families, and subscribe to stay tuned in. Now let's take a walk back in time. In the 1970s, black neighborhoods moved to a different beat. There were no gyms on every corner, no fitness apps buzzing on wrists, no one counted calories, carbs, or steps. And yet, somehow, people stayed lean, strong, and full of energy from sunrise until the streetlights flickered on. The secret wasn't a diet or a trend. It lived inside everyday life itself. Movement wasn't called exercise. It was just living. It showed up in double Dutch ropes slapping the sidewalk, in soul train lines snaking through living rooms, in bikes flying down cracked streets, and feet pounding pavement in made-up games that lasted all afternoon. Movement wasn't a chore. It was culture. It was joy. It was survival, turned into celebration. But there was a factor behind it all that tough, resilient slimness. It was the surrounding. The prevalent American state for black life in that era, which wasn't without immense hardship and its challenges. The regular suffering black man, woman, boy, and girl had been transformed from being weighed down and broken by daily hardship to growing tough skins and resilient physiques in putting up with all the challenges each day brought their way. Their slimness would become an organic product of environment, labor, scarcity, and the relentless rhythms of survival. To understand this is to step into the streets and neighborhoods of the decade, to walk alongside bodies that endured more than they were often credited for. The 1970s was, in fact, a decade that demanded everything and returned very little from black communities. Racial tensions were high, as blacks became frustrated with economic conditions that did not improve despite advancements in civil rights. America stood at a crossroads by this time, still grappling with the aftermath of the brutal 1960s. Martin Luther King Jr. had been assassinated only 2 years prior, Malcolm X 5 years earlier. The Civil Rights Act had passed 6 years before, and the Voting Rights Act had just crossed its 5th anniversary. Yet, in urban America, systemic exclusion persisted. Many black families were still navigating the first fragile sense of legal inclusion, while being economically excluded in practice. The Jim Crow laws legalized a system called segregation. This separated the daily lives of black Americans from the white community. Even though equality was guaranteed under the U.S. Constitution, segregation was seen as legally acceptable because the U.S. Supreme Court had ruled that black people could be separate but equal. Schools for black Americans were deliberately kept inferior, which meant that they would remain uneducated and not advance in society. Many could not access any form of education, and illiteracy was still high. Redlining had confined families to neighborhoods with decaying infrastructure, overworked schools, and scarce resources. Cities like Detroit, Chicago, Cleveland, Philadelphia, and Newark were already showing the scars of industrial decline, but the full collapse had not yet set in. In these cities, black bodies moved constantly. Walking was not exercise, it was survival. Black men walked miles to reach factories, service jobs, or construction sites, standing 8 to 12 hours a day, lifting, bending, and moving with a physical intensity that consumed energy even when their bellies remained empty, and then walked home carrying groceries in brown paper bags. A woman climbed apartment stairs with laundry baskets, labored at home and outside, cooked, cleaned, cared for the children, scrubbed floors on her knees, stirred pots for hours, walked to shops or jobs, and still found the energy to sweep the front porch before dusk. Children ran everywhere, not because they were told to, but because space demanded it. The streets were alive. Sidewalks were not empty corridors, but extensions of the home. There was no separation of survival from movement. The body itself became the instrument of persistence. The meals were hard-won. In the 1970s, a typical breakfast might consist of eggs, bread, or cornmeal, sometimes skipped entirely if money was short. Children went to school on empty stomachs or relied on minimal offerings from federal lunch programs. Dinner demanded planning. Beans soaked overnight, greens washed painstakingly, rice cooked slowly, meat stretched across multiple meals. There was no snacking culture, no vending machines overflowing with sugar. Sweetness existed, but it was measured and often reserved for special occasions. The body learned to wait. It did not have the luxury of constant energy intake. Hunger, persistent but muted, shaped metabolism and left no excess fat for indulgence. The slimness of the predominant Black communities in this dark era was an organic product of environment, labor, scarcity, and the relentless rhythms of survival. It is a leanness written into bones, shaped by hunger, motion, and the quiet sorrows of life under an America that offered opportunity and law, but left hardship as a daily companion. In 1971, when the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey quietly recorded body weight data across the United States, obesity was still statistically rare. The epidemic had not yet begun. Black Americans, particularly those living in working-class neighborhoods, consumed fewer calories without ever counting them. Ultra-processed foods were not yet widespread. High-fructose corn syrup was beginning its quiet rise, but had not yet saturated the diet. Soda came in small glass bottles and was shared. Snacks were occasional, not constant. Hunger was familiar, but excess was not. Food was not constant. There was breakfast, dinner, and sometimes supper. The body experienced intervals of fasting without the modern interventions of snacks, sugary drinks, or artificial substitutes. This natural cycling of caloric intake contributed to leanness. By 1972, the streets were alive with children and young adults. Urban sidewalks, stoops, and vacant lots were arenas of play, improvisation, and community gathering. Back then, go outside and play wasn't advice. It was law. Once breakfast was done, kids spilled into the streets like water breaking free. Sidewalks, empty lots, porches, alleys, everything became a playground. Tag turned rough and competitive. Hopscotch squares got redrawn every morning. Hide and seek stretched for hours, with hiding places ranging from behind trash cans to the back seat of somebody's uncle's Cadillac. Parents didn't hover. They didn't schedule play dates. They expected you gone until the streetlights came on, and you knew better than to be late. Teenagers got the same message after chores. Get out of the house. And they did. Bikes rattled down streets until chains clanked loose. Kids climbed trees until bark stained their shirts. Whole worlds were built from sticks, cardboard, and whatever the neighborhood could spare. Stickball bats leaned against stoops. Jump ropes hung from doorknobs. Sidewalk chalk waited in mailboxes. Freedom, in fact, lived in motion. If you walked down any city block in the 70s, you heard it before you saw it. The rhythmic, steady slap-slap of double Dutch ropes cutting the air, chants rising and falling, sneakers landing in perfect rhythm. Double Dutch wasn't just play, it was art. It was competition. It was cardio disguised as fun. Girls lined up watching closely, studying footwork like science. Freestylers flipped mid-jump, while crews practiced routines so tight they could rival dance teams. Grandparents sat on stoops clapping and cheering. Parents kept extra ropes hanging by the door next to house keys. In 1973, Double Dutch got official rules, and competitive teams like the Fantastic Four turned it into a national movement. But on the block, it stayed raw and unscripted. 2 phone cords, a stretch of sidewalk, and a will to jump until your legs gave out, or your mama called you home. Children ran, skipped, and climbed because there was no alternative. Because space was shared and structured differently than today. Television programs were limited, ending nightly at midnight. Saturday mornings belonged to cartoons, but Saturday afternoons, that was Soul Train. Families rushed through chores just to gather around the TV and watch Don Cornelius introduce the hippest dancers in America. The Soul Train line was the main event. Couples and solo dancers strutting down the aisle, pulling moves that made living rooms erupt in cheers. As soon as the credits rolled, kids and parents alike pushed the couch back, cranked up the record player, and tried every step they'd just seen. The robot, the locking, the bump. It didn't matter if you had 2 left feet, you danced anyway. At birthday parties and family reunions, someone always yelled, "Let's do the Soul Train line." And suddenly uncles, cousins, and grandmas formed a tunnel of clapping hands while each person took their turn down the middle. Cassette tapes sat stacked next to the turntable, ready to fuel impromptu sessions. Dancing wasn't performance, it was connection. Joy and a full-body workout disguised as culture. When the weather turned warm, neighbors didn't ask permission. They just claimed the street. Sawhorses went up at both ends of the block. Extension cords snaked from lampposts to power massive speakers, and then the music dropped. Block parties were the heartbeat of the neighborhood. DJs spun records until the pavement vibrated. Kids, teens, elders, everyone danced under open skies. In the early 70s, these parties became something even bigger. The birthplace of hip-hop. Conflicts turned into dance battles. Youth who'd once been pulled into street conflicts found a new outlet. They grabbed flattened cardboard boxes, laid them on the asphalt, and battled with footwork instead of fists. Popping, locking, breaking, moves so sharp they looked unreal. Tables lined the curb with lemonade, grilled chicken, corn on the cob. Fuel to keep bodies moving long into the night. This wasn't just dancing. It was energy redirected, pride reclaimed, a generation staying active until the sun came back up. Saturday nights at the rink were rituals. You laced up 4-wheeled skates that smelled like leather and old wax, stepped onto polished wood under spinning mirror balls, and let the music take over. Black roller rinks in the 70s weren't just entertainment. They were community hubs where everyone knew your name, your crew, and your signature move. Places like Chicago's Move Shivu became temples of rhythm skating. Soul and funk tracks guided skaters into smooth, synchronized lines. Teens practiced intricate footwork for weeks, perfecting spins, crossovers, and backward glides until they could hold their own in informal skate dance battles. People carried their own skates in drawstring bags, wheels, freshly tightened laces, color-coordinated with their outfits. At the snack bar, you could grab buttery popcorn and grape soda between sets. Roller skating wasn't just fun, it was endurance, balance, and style, all rolled into one. You didn't sit down until your legs gave out, or the DJ called last skate. If you wanted to see discipline turned into spectacle, you went to a marching band halftime show. In the 1970s, bands at historically black colleges and high schools transformed military drills into full-blown performances. High-stepping with knees lifted to 90 degrees, horns swinging in unison, drums shaking the bleachers. Students drilled on dusty fields long after sunset, running to catch late buses if they hadn't nailed the routine. Parents parked cars around the field and aimed headlights at the turf so their kids could see the formations. Band members wore heavy brass instruments strapped to their chests, plume-topped hats that added another foot of height in uniforms so sharp they could cut glass. Every step was deliberate. Every turn was synchronized. Halftime wasn't a bathroom break. It was the reason people stayed in their seats. The marching band wasn't just music. It was endurance, precision, and pride made visible. And it kept every member in peak physical shape without ever stepping foot in a gym. When the school bell rang, kids didn't head home to screens. They raced to the Boys and Girls Club. Membership cost about $2, and it was earned only after you finished homework chores and whatever your mama said needed doing. And once you got that card, the world opened up. Multiple baseball fields buzzed with games from afternoon until dusk. Kids played so hard they'd sprint home for lunch, then sprint right back to catch the next inning. The clubs filled gaps that few other organizations could. Organized sports, mentors who cared, and a safe place to burn energy until your legs were jelly. Basketball courts hosted pickup games that turned into travel team tryouts. Every activity demanded movement, focus, and hustle. The clubs didn't just keep kids off the streets. They kept them strong, sharp, and surrounded by people who believed in them. Movement was organic, a product of necessity and joy alike. Calories burned invisibly, muscles strengthened without instruction. The body, unencumbered by sedentary temptations, developed naturally lean forms. In 1973, the oil crisis reshaped American life. Gasoline shortages meant fewer casual trips by car, forcing many to walk longer distances to work, shops, and schools. Public transportation became central, crowded, and physically demanding. For Black communities, these shifts intensified an already active lifestyle. Meanwhile, inflation tightened household budgets. Food was stretched further. Portions became more deliberate. Leftovers were valuable. Waste was not tolerated. Thinness, again, reflected not choice but circumstance. The year 1974 deepened this reality. Black unemployment rose, nearly double that of whites. Men stood in lines, applied repeatedly for scarce jobs, and returned home with nothing to show but fatigue. Women often carried the double burden, seeking income where possible and managing households. Emotional stress hollowed the body. Appetite diminished under the weight of uncertainty. Sleep was fractured. Slimness, evident in photographs, often masked the physiological effects of stress and undernourishment. Fatigue and grief were as inscribed in muscle as any diet could be. By 1975, fast food had entered the scene, but had not yet saturated Black neighborhoods. McDonald's, Burger King, and KFC existed, but their density was limited. You did not pass 3 drive-thrus within a mile. Eating out was occasional, not habitual. Meals required effort, preparation, cooking, cleaning. This labor enforced moderation. You could not mindlessly overconsume what demanded hours to make. Hunger remained a natural signal, answered but not overstimulated. Music, however, offered physical release. Funk, soul, and early disco commanded movement. James Brown, Parliament Funkadelic, Earth, Wind and Fire did not create stillness. They produced rhythm that required motion. Dance floors, basement parties, church halls, and block gatherings became arenas of joyous physical exertion. Sweat and movement once again balanced what scarcity denied. In 1976, as the nation celebrated its bicentennial, Black communities faced ongoing challenges. Factory layoffs increased, but many jobs still required physical labor. Automation had not yet fully replaced muscle. Unemployed Black Americans moved constantly, searching, organizing, surviving. Sitting idle was not common. There were too many demands, too many responsibilities pressing against time. Housing stock remained poor. Schools were underfunded. Healthcare was limited. The stress of systemic inequity pressed on bodies daily. Yet these challenges produced leaner forms, honed by labor and endurance. Cortisol was high, sleep often inadequate, but movement never ceased. Body weight reflected these pressures, not choice alone. By 1977, walking remained essential. Cars were sparse, repairs expensive. Every errand required steps. Stairs replaced elevators. Calves, lungs, and posture reflected years of habitual activity. The body adapted not through intention, but repetition. Food scarcity, labor, and exercise were not discrete events. They were woven together. The diet industry had not yet arrived. Detox programs, protein powders, and calorie tracking apps were decades away. Eating remained simple, until satisfied, not until stimulated. The body knew when to stop because food had not been engineered to bypass that signal. It recognized fullness, a signal largely ignored in later decades. In 1978, just before the floodgates opened, subtle changes began. Processed foods expanded in availability. High fructose corn syrup began appearing more aggressively in processed snacks and beverages. Portion sizes began to creep upward. Convenience, gradually marketed by this time, began its slow seduction, whispering promises of easier labor. Yet, for most of the decade, black bodies remained largely uncolonized by food engineering. Artificial additives were minimal. Chemical interventions on metabolism were rare. The gut still understood food as sustenance, not a manipulated product. By 1979, the decade drew to a close with these quiet transformations underway. The lean forms of black children, men, and women reflected a decade of movement, endurance, scarcity, and survival. Slimness was a side effect of life lived on the edge. Poverty, underemployment, urban decay, and emotional stress shaping metabolism as surely as diet or exercise could. The body recorded each hardship, each skipped meal, each mile walked, each hour of labor, each night of interrupted sleep. By the time the 1980s arrived, the environment shifted decisively. Ultra-processed foods surged. Fast food density increased. Screens and sedentary lifestyles multiplied. Stress intensified. Sleep is further fractured. Bodies responded biologically. Obesity rates began rising, disproportionately affecting black communities already marginalized by structural inequities. When historians look back now, they often miss this bodily dimension of the past. They analyze laws, protests, elections, and music. But the body itself tells a parallel story. The slimness of the 1970s should not be romanticized as perfection or choice. It carried hunger, fatigue, grief, and relentless labor. It bore witness to the daily endurance of black Americans in a country still unequal in access, opportunity, and health. Photographs from the era preserve more than fashion. They capture a metabolic and emotional reality forged under constraint. To look back at these bodies is to read a history written in muscle, bone, and posture, a testimony of survival, sorrow, and strength. By understanding why black people were slimmer in the 1970s, we glimpse the intersection of social conditions, labor, scarcity, and resilience. It was a leanness shaped by walking cities, labor-intensive households, scarce food, limited processed options, chronic stress, and a culture of communal movement. This was a time before the corporate manipulation of appetite became dominant, before calorie-dense industrial food flooded neighborhoods, before sedentary culture and screens dictated every waking hour. Bodies reflected the environment, not mere personal choice. As the 1980s and later decades reshaped American life, the environment that had enforced lean survival disappeared. Cheap calories, sedentary work, constant access to energy-dense foods, and structural pressures created conditions for weight gain. The slimness of the 1970s stands as a historical record, not of leisure or abundance, but of resilience. It was a record of a people moving constantly, living intensely, enduring inequality, and surviving. In closing, to see these photographs and still images is to understand that lean black bodies of the 1970s were not accidental. They were the product of systemic scarcity, unending movement, emotional and physical stress, and careful rationing of limited resources. Slimness, in this context, although looked healthy, was not always a marker of health. It was a marker of life under constraint, endurance, and the quiet dignity of survival. That brings us to the end of yet another memorable video segment. And if you enjoyed the video, support our works by hitting the like button in front of you. Share video with your friends and families to keep spreading our eye-opening black narrative, and kindly subscribe to stay tuned in to the channel. We are delighted to have you on this journey with us. Thank you for watching.